So the next thing we need to do is basically cover our tracks. Make sure that there's no evidence of us being in there. Not from the perspective of, I don't want them to know I've been in there. They've hired me to do the pen test, but I want to be able to show that an attacker could do the same thing. And one of the things I'm going to do is simply go through on systems that are running some type of auditing and turn it off. So I could use audit poll to turn off the auditing, or even a PowerShell command. Now, we all know that systems always have log files on them, right? Well, I can either go through and attempt to remove what I've done from the log files. This is extremely easy to do on older systems. On newer systems, I just take this perspective, and that is typically log files are limited to a 1 meg or a 5 meg limitation, and then they start overwriting the oldest entries first. Well, how about if I just throw a bunch of gobbledygook at that log file so that it goes through and overwrites all that I've done? We do that through log flooding. And of course, if I've created any type of remote connections, I need to make sure that I turn those connections off. And if I've opened any ports, I need to make sure that I close those as well. Now, in this section of pen testing, you're going to have a lot of information that, yep, we're going to have to go through and update our documentation. We're always refreshing this thing over and over and over because we're learning so much as we go through each section of the pen test environment. So in this module, we went through and took a look at the different things that we need to take into consideration when we're going through the hacking the system portion of a pen test. We looked at the purpose. Again, our purpose was to evaluate the current security posture of the system, the target, the network, as well as users. And we accomplished that by simulating different types of attacks to see, again, our goal here is to see if we can pwn that target. Now, when it came to those steps, we went through and talked about how we go through and use, first of all, different password cracking techniques, starting off again of being very, very quiet, like shoulder surfing, social engineering, all those things are very, very passive. And then we got very active all the way up to brute force and even guessing a password. We also then talked about privilege escalation, how we can do it both vertically or horizontally. Then we talked about the service accounts. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about the latest and greatest by Microsoft is the managed service accounts, where you go through and you create a service account, and if the application supports it, which, gee, I bet Microsoft applications support it, they do. But what happens is that based off of your password policy, it just automatically rotates the passwords for you every 30 days or 60 days, whatever you have it set up for. It's really kind of a cool technology. In fact, that would be one of my solutions I would offer if I see that they're not doing that in the pen test. We then talked about how we fire off our applications to make it easier for us to get in and to set up our tools for future use. Then how we hid those tools using different techniques like rootkits or alternate data streams or even steganography. And then we talked about how do we actually cover our tracks, because the pen test doesn't happen in one day. And I don't want people to be able to see that I've been into that machine, because then what do? They'll go off and re-image it, right? Or try to fix and undo the things that I've done. Then we talked about, obviously, and we always talk about it, is documentation, documentation, documentation. Remember, it's through documentation that we're going to not only show them what we've able to discover, but also offer up our solutions. So now that we've hacked the target, maybe we use that particular target to do the next step in the pen test, and that is sniffing the network.